Subscribe, like, comment and share to support the channel. Thank you for the support. The story begins during the Bakumatsu era. There was a sickly girl who was dying in a samurai clan. A divine revelation was bestowed. After many generations, a blessed body will be born to a sage who will save the world. Soon after, the miraculously recovered girl gathered those who worshipped the god alongside her to form a congregation. Perhaps because they originated from a samurai clan, their philosophy is rather warrior-like. According to them, miracles are self-determined. Say hello to Mummy everyone. The scene changes to a view of a magnificent-looking mansion. A man with prayer beads in his hand is speaking. Among us we pass on a teaching he preaches. This man was the founder of God and man as one. His name was Yamagami Judo. He sits in the middle of a pool on a throne, surrounded by his fellow followers and angel statues. He tells them that they cannot fall under your umbrella. This was directed to the bald man who has a tattoo on his head. The tattoo is translated to mean founder. Judo continues to say that as God's teaching forbid violence and conflict, to forbid obtaining wealth from those methods, to value inside all humans, exits part of God to become as one with God. But the bald man cuts him off saying, bullshit. The bald man who was giving off major Big Daddy vibes was the founder of another religion group called the God and Earth Reverence Church. He was called Urabe Sutra. He repeats what Judo said about value and property. He tells them that it was just an excuse to gather donations by telling believers to throw away wealth. With such wickedness, to say that God exists in you is absolutely disgusting. I want to throw up, said Urabe as he stands with massive booty cheeks ripe for collection. Judo then questions him by saying that such words of praise, what kind of teaching might the God and Earth Reverence Church have? Judo tells him that it was really simple. Rely on God for nothing, using your own body realize your desires yourself. Essentially, miracles are self-determined. Miracles are self-determined, as their God Matama-sama is the world's strongest, greatest, and absolute God. Our muscle daddy grips his fist so hard that an aura started to form around him. He continues to tell Judo that the favor inhabiting the bodies of her believers rests as a power that is unwatched. Judo remains silent for a moment after hearing those words, but he soon bursts into laughter. The world's strongest and greatest, he shouted as he asks our muscle daddy if he was child while still laughing madly. He begins to stand up from his throne, telling him that it was good to have so much faith in his so-called Matama-sama favor. Judo decides to display a miracle of his own to our muscle daddy. He claps his hands together and his feet could be seen hovering over the water. Judo was in a praying position while being right above the waters as if he was floating by divine powers. His followers couldn't believe what they were seeing and called it a miracle. They continued to cheer on that Judo was able to stand over the water. It was something that flesh and blood from humans couldn't do. A wire trap could be seen in the ceiling which was attached to the back of Judo, but most of his followers were too blind to see that. As they continued to cheer him on as a miracle, they even go so far as to proclaim him as their one true God. After hearing the cheers from his followers, Judo asks a question to Muscle Daddy, asking him how it felt to witness a miracle right before your very eyes. But our Muscle Daddy wasn't like anyone else. He calls out that there was a piano wire attached to him and that it was no miracle. He then shouts out a name, Kayamaru. A loud crunching sound could be heard once that name was called. Muscle Mommy has arrived, gentlemen. Feast your eyes on this magnificent sight. All hail Muscle Mommy. Comment below Muscle Mommy. Kayamaru had finally arrived and had pulled the doorknob right of the door with ease. She was the department head of the God and Earth Reverence Church, Urabe Kayamaru. Muscle Daddy then orders her to show the sham religion what a real miracle looks like. She proceeds to throw away the doorknob to the side and took a step on the ring surrounding the water, which began to crack under her Muscle Mommy aura. The author has blessed us with another look at our Muscle Mommy. Let's us take a moment to appreciate the artwork. Judo was surprised to see her stand still. He then asks her if she was going to perform the same miracle, which was impossible if no preparations was done. But his eyes soon gains back his pupils as he witnessed something shocking. Massive explosions could be seen at Kayamaru's feet as the water below her started to flow everywhere. Judo's followers were shocked to see that she was able to stand on water, which was the stand miracle as Judo. But one of them realizes something as they took a closer look at her miracle. They discovered that Kayamaru was just constantly kicking the water so fast that their eyes couldn't keep up, giving off One Punch Man vibes. The followers continued to be amazed as they wondered if a human could really do something like that, making it a different kind of miracle. Judo started to panic as he could see his followers being amazed. He then decides to show off another miracle called God and Man floating as one. which was just being in a lotus position and raised higher, into the air, but his pupils returned once again as he looks up and sees something alarming above him. Kayamaru had appeared high above him with her leg raised up high. Her face looked like a predator about to chomp down on its prey. She looks at him with a serious tone in her eyes. "Your miracle can only go that high?" she asks, as Judo started to sweat as he wonders if what she did was really a miracle or just a really high jump. But his thoughts were literally smashed to bits as Kayamaru spin kicks in the air with ease. He lands head first into the pool of water. His followers called out to him with concern and shock that their founder had lost. Muscle Daddy began to speak out to his followers, telling them that the miracle they just witnessed can be performed by anyone with training, meaning that miracles are self-determined, and that their god Matama-sama will bestow upon them the true miracle of transcendental power. He continues to tell that their teachings on obtaining power into the God and Earth reverence church, hence they must convert. Judo's followers began to beg our Muscle Daddy to let them join his religion instead. They continued to chant the words, get big, as Kayamaru just mindlessly stares into space. Muscle Daddy then approaches her and thanks her for the job well done as they have now gained more believers, but she tells him to keep his thanks. Her face brightens with a bright smile as she tells him to hurry and let her see her little brother. But a shocking revelation came to Muscle Daddy. He looks down with concern and tells Kayamaru that there was something he needed to tell her. She exclaims in excitement and asked if he had finally agreed to the marriage between her and her little brother. But Muscle Daddy tells her that was not it and that what she wanted was a legal issue. With a calm and serious tone, he tells her that her younger brother had passed on. Her eyes opened wide as the words entered her mind. "What?" she said as the room grew silent. The followers watched in silence until blood began to drip on the floor. A hand was grabbing onto Muscle Daddy's face with blood flowing everywhere as he pants heavily. The hand had belonged to Kayamaru, who was holding him up with ease. The followers began to stare in disbelief until Kayamaru tells him to give him back. She gives off a serious face as she continues to tell him to give back her little brother. Muscle Daddy tried to explain to her that her younger brother had went on a mission for their congregation, and had went on a journey to Matama-sama's side. But he did not die but instead went to the typical other world. But who gives a shit? Kayamaru tells him, her face filled with more seriousness as she tells him that she was going to marry her younger brother. Muscle Daddy could only think that she was not getting it. He noted that their congregation was nothing but meatheads, but Kayamaru was a step above the rest and wondered how things had gotten like this. She started to look for something in her pants and began to pull out a bunch of photos. She tells Muscle Daddy to look at the photos that she carries with her everywhere she went. It was her precious collection. The photos contained images of her younger brother from young and sometimes in the toilet, and even when he was bathing. Kayamaru continues to tell Muscle Daddy that her younger brother would follow her around when he was small, calling her Onee-chan, and that they would get married when he got bigger. Kayamaru begins to pant heavily and blushes heavily. Muscle Daddy tells her to calm down since he was no longer of this world. But Kayamaru was in her brother-obsessed mood. She swings him around while calling her younger so cute. Muscle Daddy begs him to stop and finally tells her that there was a way to meet him. It was for her to be transferred to another world as well. But soon a crack sound is heard. Muscle Daddy was finally thrown outside a window. He screams in horror as he began to drop fast towards the ground. Kayamaru Simplified watched from the broken window. She repeats the words "another world transfer." Bubbles began to form in the water. Judo was finally dragged out from the water. Kayamaru flings him to the side. As he coughs up water, he tells her that he had almost died, but Kayamaru calls him a scammer asshole. Before asking him what another world transfer was supposed to, he stares at her in silence before explaining. The scene changes to our old friend Truck-kun, who is the main character in almost everywhere Isekai manga. A driver was seen dozing off, but he soon realizes something. There was a figure on the road he was driving on. Is there someone in the middle of the freeway? He shouts just as the figure was revealed to be Kayamaru. She looks at the incoming truck with dead eyes and a serious face. The driver soon realizes that he couldn't press the brakes anymore in time. So instead Kayamaru became the brakes for the truck as she slammed her body against it. The truck was instead sent to another world as it flips through the air, and soon crashes. Judo shouts at her from the bridge and told her that she was supposed to die. But Kayamaru tells him that people don't die from getting hit by a truck. He continues to tell her that she couldn't transfer to another world unless she dies. He continues to beg Kayamaru to die as she stood still. From that day onwards, Kayamaru became determined to die by trying anything. A crazy man appears with a knife in his hand. It pierces something but somehow snapped in half. Kayamaru had attempted to die by getting stabbed in the stomach by a street thug. She had jumped down a cliff and fought a bear. She even consumed large amounts of drugs and burning charcoal inside a car. She even resorted to covering herself in gasoline and lighting herself on fire. She worked at an extremely abusive company and joined a death march, working day and night for an entire month, aiming for death from overwork, but none of it had any effect on Kayamaru's body of steel. Judo appears with a bunch of muscle daddies behind him. He tells her that they had fully recognized the extent of her life force, and that to reach her goal they had no other methods remaining. Kayamaru could now been seen buried inside a barrel. This was the God and Earth Reverence Church's rites of creation. Muscle Daddy explains to her that it was originally only for the next founder to undergo this sacred rite and that she had no such qualifications at all. He continues to explain to her the reasoning behind the sacred ritual, but she decides to cut him off. "You gonna kill me or what?" she said with a serious and dead look on her face. Muscle Daddy begins to shout out, "We call upon the our one true God. We call upon the Matama-sama, heave ho, heave ho." They shouted as they stood near a cliff. The group was carrying Kayamaru while she was still inside the barrel. Her face was filled with joy and a little bit of perverseness. As she finally realizes that she was going to another world, "Bon voyage Kayamaru-sama," the group shouted as they finally threw her down. A big splash is seen as the group continued to watch from the cliff. Judo then asks Muscle Daddy if this was going to kill her, but he looks up in the air and tells him that it won't do. Tears drip down his face as he thought about her overflowing passion for her younger brother along with the power of love, but it turns out that both men were crying due to the fact of how scary she was to both of them. But deep in Muscle Daddy's mind, he absolutely did not want Kayamaru to go to her younger brother's side. Kayamaru could now be seen still stuck in the barrel. She had appeared in a whole different place. She looks around and wonders if this was supposed to be another world, but she brushes that thought away as it looked familiar to the countryside. A shadow soon covers her and she turns to see what it was. It was a massive reptile-looking dinosaur mofo. Kayamaru continues to stare at it while still being stuck in the barrel. Muscle Daddy was concerned about Kayamaru's strength just as the reptile dinosaur began to attack. It was because her strength was a cheat itself. Kayamaru manages to break free from the barrel and knocked out the beast with a single punch. Her cheat was so strong that she didn't even need Matama-sama if she were to meet her younger brother. Then his mission and their congregation's divine mandate, all of it will come to ruin. Kayamaru had managed to easily overwhelm the beast as she stood victorious over its corpse. She looks from beyond the cliff and knew that her younger brother Yukito was somewhere in this world. A smile grew on her face as she spoke these words. "Right now Onee-chan's coming to get you." She continues to sit around saying that Yukito was somewhere in this world. She tells him to wait for her as she will soon find him. She acts out about how he would say "I love you" the moment she appears in front of him, and that they will get married. Kayamaru was ready to accept the part that Yukito has, a part that every guy has, if you catch my drift. She screams at the top of her lungs while being on top of multiple dead beasts. "I'm ready to get pregnant." She continues to chant Yukito's name to the point when she started to blush heavily. She soon calms herself down while breathing hard. She was getting wet just thinking about it. This is what the author wrote, not me guys. She soon realizes that the first thing she needed to do was information gathering. A huge fire could be seen in the distance. Villagers are running away as their town is set in fire. They struggled to get out of the town as the fire had spread everywhere. They were calling out for help any way they could. A voice calls out to Naya as a hand pulls another. Two young kids, a boy and a girl, are seen running away together. The boy was called Noru while the young girl was called Naya. He tells her to not let go of his hand and to follow him. But Naya asks him about how their entire village was suddenly set on fire. Noru tells her that he didn't know what had happened as by the time he realized it, the village was already on fire. They continued to run away as they needed to find a safe place, but Noru soon bumps into something hard. He holds his face in pain as he asks the person why she was just standing there and not running away. Kayamaru appears with her muscles flexed and asked the kids if they had seen her younger brother. Noru was too stunned to speak. He breaks out of the trance and tells Kayamaru that she needed to get out of here due to the fire, but she remains adamant in finding her brother as she explains to Noru that he was her fiancé. She pulls out a photo of him sleeping in his pajamas while holding onto a teddy bear. She then asks if he was pretty. Noru reluctantly agrees but immediately snaps at Kayamaru, wondering why she was showing them a photo when there was a fire going on. Kayamaru explains that when she was exploring other countries and remote regions, the local people rebelled and many times entire settlements were burned to the ground. She thinks about how the village being set on fire was a familiar scene. Noru could only wonder about what she was saying before Naya calls out to him. She asks him what was wrong and who he was talking to. Noru tells her that it was nothing and that he had just met a crazy woman. Kayamaru takes a closer look at Naya and realizes that she was blind, but it was then that Noru realizes something was wrong. He immediately grabs onto Naya and flung themselves away. He yells out, "Watch out!" Just as a huge explosion appears in front of them, the kids fall to the ground just as a voice could be heard laughing out loud. A woman with two very big reasons to like her appears. She shouts out, "Burn, burn," while laughing out loud. Noru protects Naya and questions who the weird lady was. He wonders if she was the one who was burning the village. The lady asks Noru if he didn't know who she was. She then introduces herself as the Archon of Fire, Lord Hephaestus. Both Noru and Naya were alarmed. To discover who she was, Naya began to recall who exactly she was. A unit directly under the Emperor's command of the Imperial City Army, rumored to be a group of xenomorphic superhuman. Noru yells at her about why she was doing this, but Hap tells him that not long ago, the Imperial capital was destroyed by an Archon's rebellion. The Emperor was dead too. Since then the country had become a battle which the Warring States period began. Hap had then decided to take control of this village, but the village chiefs didn't agree to her demands, so she decided to show them what she could do. Noru remains silent overhearing her horrible excuse, but he soon opens his mouth to blame her. Her reply was a straight kick into our little man's body. Naya calls out to Noru in concern. Hap continues to tell him that half the people in this village will be killed and will serve as an example, where the others would be slaves. Since the weak follow the strong, that's how the world works, she says. While showing off her fire skills, Noru tries to stand up as he tells her to leave Naya alone as he didn't care about what would happen to him. A true man, Hap tells him that he was being annoying, as he reminded her of a guy called Yukito. She recalls that even though he was a weak person, people for some reason would think he was equal to the Archons. Hap began to feel pissed off about recalling Yukito's face and decided to make Noru into a slave. She then proceeds to burn everything right here right now, but a voice calls out to her. Kayamaru appears with her clothes slightly burnt. She wore a calm expression on her face as she asks Hap if she knew her brother. Awkward silence filled with burning village as everyone stared at Kayamaru. Haps was surprised to see that Kayamaru was fine as she made sure to turn her to charcoal. Kayamaru continues to question her if she knew where her brother Yukito was, but Haps decides to not answer someone who is about to die. She flings a fireball straight towards Kayamaru, who sees it coming. She turns into demon mode and kicks the fireball right in its ball. The fireball explodes in midair. It shocks Haps and the kids. Kayamaru explains that if you cut off the air with a kick, then the flames will be extinguished. That is the law of nature. Kayamaru then poses in a high kick stance in front of them. Haps began to panic as she couldn't believe what she just saw. Any superpower is meaningless in the face of overwhelming force. Because miracles are done by force, Haps shouts at Kayamaru to not F with her. She begins to cast even more flames, telling her that the Archons should become the gods of this world. Kayamaru's reply was simply a face straight to her ugly face. She had entered demon mode once again, sending Haps flying through the air with a single punch. Haps was knocked out as she crashed. The kids stared with open mouths as Kayamaru questions Haps about God. "My only god is my brother Yukito," she proclaimed as her fighter spirit appears around her. Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.